people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. What was Sky Nicholson's super bantamweight debut on the undercard of Eubank versus Catterall opposite the ring, Carla Gonzalez, who Sky Nicholson beat from pillar to post from the opening round. There was a difference in Sky. Stepping into her punches and regularly bringing the backhand over, she was more willing to take chances.
Why?
Well, moving down in weight from feather down to super bantam, you're going to end up fighting girls that you're noticeably taller than, noticeably longer than, and there is a power advantage there too that Sky seems to be landing with more authority as a super bantamweight than she did as a feather. We only really got glimpses of Sky's power at feather.
Most of the time she was hanging back and staying behind the jab, working off the counter, whereas at super bantam, she's stepping into the jab, bringing the backhand over, holding her feet a little more,
trying for punches a little more, not just jabs and backhands, but also body shots. What enables this change in Sky Nicholson is that the girls at super bantam are a little smaller than the girls at feather, so she's going to have a height advantage, a reach advantage, bit of a power boost.
Her punches land a bit harder,
and she doesn't have to worry as much about what's coming back at her, because the girls at super bantam don't punch as hard as the girls at feather, and the girls at super bantam are a little shorter, so if worst comes to worst, you can step out and be out of range of those punches, which does lend itself to Sky's boxing.
She is a noticeably long and limber fighter. In the featherweight division, for the most part, she used that to her advantage, whereas in this fight, she was a lot more spiteful than usual, a lot more aggressive than usual, and that's what I've wanted to see from Sky.
She even threw some combinations in there, though the fight didn't last very long. I saw her string together 2 and 3 punch combinations, laying into Carla Gonzalez, but there is also the level of opponent that she was in there with. There are more difficult and dangerous fighters in the super bantamweight division than Carla Gonzalez, who was a deer in the headlights. Sky Nicholson couldn't miss her with the backhand.
When you walked in the ring, like, what was the feeling? Is there that extra nerves, I guess, or is there extra sort of like demons that people say when you come off a fight like that, or did you not really feel it?
I prepared for this whole fight, and I walked to that ring as if it was a world title fight. I wasn't focused on my opponent. I wasn't focused on the event. I wasn't focused on being on before the bell, being on early. I wasn't focused on any of those things. I was focused on me, myself, and I was walking out there like it was my world title fight. I prepared every single day, every single training session like it was a world title fight. And I knew that I needed to do that to get the best out of myself.
Now, obviously, as a super bantamweight, Sky Nicholson has bigger fish to fry. She didn't move all the way down there to fight the Carla Gonzalez's of the world. This was just a little tick over to acquaint her with the division and get her back in the winner's bracket. We all know what kind of fighters she's after. She's after the winner of Scottney versus Mercado, who I anticipate will be Ellie Scottney, who just recently signed to MVP, where before Ellie and Sky were fighting under the Matchroom banner. Now they are on separate sides of the street, though ultimately, I don't think that would hold up a fight between them. What could?
Sky doesn't have a belt.
Ellie Scottney is currently on an undisputed run, already in possession of 2 of the 4 major titles at this weight. If she beats Jamie Mercado, that makes 3, leaving only 1 more to collect.
Sky doesn't have a belt.
To get Ellie Scottney's attention, she has to get one. She has to face the winner of the upcoming Mayeli Flores versus Nazarena Romero rematch. Otherwise,
no fight.
Ellie won't have any reason to fight her. Fight her for what? Won't be any reason to do it We also have to change our perception of what that fight might look like, because where before it seemed like Sky was going to do what she normally does, hang back, move around, stay behind the jab, and be careful, she's changed.
She's more aggressive.
Thinking about the fight before, just based on how Sky was fighting, it looked a lot like it would be up to Ellie Scottney to close the distance on Sky and get inside on her, whereas now, Sky stepping into her punches, maybe she gets inside on Ellie. Maybe she takes it to Ellie Scottney. Because she is landing with more authority as a super bantamweight, and at least based on this fight, she's holding her feet more to stay in position more to land more punches.
Taking a more offensive approach, and I like it.
Changes the dichotomy of that fight, perhaps the dynamics. If Sky decides to take it to Ellie, how does Ellie respond? Can she? It's a very exciting time at super bantamweight.
Good on Sky Nicholson and what was her super bantamweight debut. Successful, entertaining, and she looks to be a force to be reckoned with.
Men's cruiserweight news. Due to heavy criticism and outrage from other ranked contenders, the WBA will review Jake Paul's cruiserweight ranking at their upcoming European convention in Madrid, which takes place from July 15th to the 18th. The WBA ranked Paul number 14 in its cruiserweight rankings after his lackluster win over Julio Cesar Chavez.
It's not surprising that the contenders are angry.
Chavez Jr. wasn't ranked at cruiserweight, and his last notable win came in 2012 at middleweight. Paul has never defeated a ranked boxer in that division unless you count his quote-unquote fight with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. I want to preface everything I'm about to say with, you can't really fault Jake Paul for taking advantage the way many other professional boxers would. He's not the one at fault here. It's really the WBA that are not performing the most essential function.
They're not doing their job.
These alphabet organizations like the WBA, the WBC, the WBO, and the IBF are intended to give boxing its pecking order, its hierarchy, to separate the contenders from the pretenders.
The good fighters from the bad. But if you give a Jake Paul a top 15 rank, having not faced an actual cruiserweight and one that was ranked...
Many fights does Jake Paul have? About 13 or so. And of the 13, how many of those guys were actual boxers? And of those boxers, how many of them were cruiserweights? And how many of them were ranked cruiserweights? This is what the other guys in the ranks are angry about, that the WBA has seemingly made it very easy for Jake Paul to achieve a rank and maintain one, while they had to do it the hard way, fighting other cruiserweights and other ranked fighters, fighting in eliminators, paying sanctioning fees.
Where Jake gets to be ranked in the top 15, having not faced any other top 15 cruiserweights.
The reason I don't blame him for this is because Jake is just taking advantage the same way any other pugilist would in that exact same situation. He's really not the one that's at fault here. It's the WBA. Consider that Hamza Shiraz, who is now moving up from middle up to super middle, hasn't beaten a single super middleweight, and he's already ranked at number 2 via 2 separate alphabet organizations.
Hamza is in many ways benefiting from the same inconsistencies with these alphabet organizations that Jake Paul is also benefiting from.
He's taking advantage the same way that Jake Paul is taking advantage, and in this situation, it's not the fighters you have to blame. It's the alphabet organizations and their lack of governance.
Now, the WBA has come under criticism from all of the other ranked fighters for seemingly making it very easy for Jake to achieve a rank among them whilst not having to fight them. Even worse.
The whole point of ranking Jake Paul in the top 15 was to leave the door open for Jake to challenge for the full WBA title against the full WBA champion, which is Zurdo Ramirez.
That's why they did it.
Except that Jake Paul has no intention of fighting Zurdo Ramirez. Jake took to his social media and stated, "Shout out to the WBA and Gilberto Mendoza for being disruptors and not being afraid to recognize me. Seeing all these lists with current champion Badu Jack. Give me him next."
Isn't that what I told you he was going to do? If he has to choose between Zurdo Ramirez and Badu Jack, he's going to go with Badu Jack, because Badu Jack, as good as he is 42 years old.
Make it make sense.
The WBA seemingly alienated all the fighters in their rank standings to accommodate Jake Paul, just for Jake Paul to go in a different direction anyway, because he's not after their title. He is seemingly after the WBC title.
So you pissed off all those people for nothing.
No reason. Because I never thought that Jake Paul was going to fight Zurdo Ramirez. I question whether or not he's even going to fight Badu too.
Think about it. The guy's got a grand total of 13 professional fights. You can hardly fault him for not being ready to fight two experienced champions like Zurdo and Badu Jack. People get so caught up not liking this guy, they stopped making sense. After his fight with Julio, he also mentioned running it back with Tommy Fury, and I think that's the more logical way to go.
Have a rematch.
Since their initial meeting, you could argue that Jake Paul has been in there with more boxers than Tommy Fury.
It's an option.
He also mentioned fighting Badu Jack, and that's all well and good, but currently Badu Jack is under orders to have a rematch with former champion Noel Mikhailian. The WBC ordered that rematch not but 1 or 2 weeks ago, so I don't even know that Badu Jack is at liberty to afford Jake Paul a title shot. I'm sure that he would if he could, if he were free to do that.
Even at 42 years old, Badu Jack may be too much for Jake Paul, who very much is a novice.
A fighter with no prior amateur experience and with 13 professional bouts to his name, very few of those bouts were against actual boxers. So while I don't fault Jake Paul for what he's doing and all of that, at the end of the day, I don't actually think he's ready for Badu Jack or Zurdo Ramirez.
And this entire kerfuddle has more to do with the alphabet organizations whoring themselves to any fighter who can sell some tickets.
No, this is more their fault than Jake Paul. If you want to be angry at someone, you should be angry at them, because for some years now, whether it's the WBC or the WBA, they've been devising strategies to try to cash in on Jake Paul's party, to get him a rank so that they can get sanctioning fees from him moving forward, since they know he's a 7 or 8-figure fighter.
Whatever it is, what did the WBC say ahead of the Tommy Fury fight? That if Jake Paul would have won, they would have got him a rank. And what do you see the WBA doing now?
They pissed a lot of people off, giving Jake Paul a top 15 rank standing for no other reason than he generates money. Do you think they'd be affording him an opportunity like this if he didn't generate money, if there weren't money behind him?
Just for him to not pursue the WBA title anyway. I figured that he wasn't going to. And because he isn't,
IBF Ring Magazine champion Jai Opetaia is teasing at a Gilberto Ramirez unification. Eager to not be forgotten, IBF Cruiserweight champion Jai Opetaia today reminded Gilberto Ramirez, the WBA and WBO Cruiserweight champion, that only one fight needs to take place at Cruiser this year. It was important, timely reminder, and one that comes just a week after Ramirez successfully defended his belts against Cuba's Uniel Dorticos in a 12-round decision. Also on that bill was Jake Paul, another cruiserweight whose win over Julio Cesar Chavez was apparently all that was required to land him a WBA ranking and move him one step closer to challenging Ramirez.
Except now we know he doesn't really want to.
As for Opetaia, he was last seen stopping Claudio Sequeiro in the 5th round of a mismatch last month. After that win, which left Sequeiro with a broken jaw, the Australian made a point of mentioning Ramirez's name in his post-fight interview. A unification of 3 belts seemed a natural one to make next. All Ramirez had to do was beat Dorticos, and the date and location wouldn't be too far behind. Then Jake Paul became a possibility for Zurdo, and suddenly Opetaia remembered that dollars will always trump duty. Suddenly, thanks to the WBA, there was a chance for Ramirez to be the active boxer who finally decides to call Jake Paul's bluff and actually agree to meet him in the ring and fight him. Suddenly, there was a fear that he, Opetaia, might be the one forgotten in all of this, but a lot has happened since then. We see what's going on with the WBA and Jake and what we just talked about, and we also see that David Benavidez,
We now have confirmation that he won't be moving up to cruiserweight for his next fight. He won't be fighting Zurdo Ramirez. He's staying put at light heavy. and fighting Anthony Yarde,
seemingly leaving Zurdo Ramirez free to unify. Whether a true concern of his or not, Opetaia took to his social media on July 5th to write, "I'm coming for my belts," and accompanied the message with a fight poster featuring the two of them, Opetaia and Ramirez. More revealing, though, was the poster's tagline, "The only fight needed," which suggests that Opetaia is aware of and slightly perturbed by the prospect of Ramirez capitalizing on Paul's ego and generous ranking to make easy money. It suggests that Opetaia feels Ramirez needs reminding of his duty. Of course, if the shoe was on the other foot, there's every chance that Opetaia would entertain Paul the same way. He too might be flirting with the idea of putting a cash cow out of his misery, and he too might be indulging in the American's fantasies. But if you're not in the Jake Paul business, and Opetaia isn't, it must be difficult to just sit and watch as popularity opens doors and creates opportunities at your expense. Opetaia, you see, isn't just deserving of a big fight this year, he is perhaps in need of one. Now, 28-0 with 22 KOs, it's been a while since he was really tested as IBF champion, and though he continues to improve and impress with each fight, there has long been a sense that the 30-year-old is due his moment in the sun. He has, unlike Jake Paul, earned it.
So here's the thing. We know Jake's not going to fight Zurdo. And in truth, we always knew that Jake wasn't going to fight Zurdo. But David Benavidez isn't going to fight Zurdo either. That's the fight that I felt Zurdo had in his back pocket. David too.
That they could always fight each other, that if David can't find somebody to fight at 175, he has been talking about moving up to cruiser for a long time, and Zurdo is there. Things have changed. Unexpected announcements.
The last thing I expected to hear was that David would bend the knee and go box in Saudi. I didn't see that coming at all.
And because he is, that leaves Zurdo without a dance partner, essentially. Without Jake Paul, without David Benavidez, Jai Opetaia.
Jai is his best option now to get at a big bag, a big purse.
Perhaps the biggest of both Jai's career and Zurdo's, because I don't imagine Zurdo was making very much down there at super middle or light heavy. He stands to make the most money, I think, he's ever made boxing Jai Opetaia. That now becomes his most lucrative option. Turkey would pay handsomely to put that fight together. He's already had Jai Opetaia box on a number of his shows. What's it been? 2 or 3 times? And Zurdo has made at least 1 appearance on Turkey shows.
Riyadh season Latino night last year.
The only hindrance, I think, would have to be Oscar De La Hoya. I don't think Oscar's ever wanted this fight to happen. He's never wanted to put it together. I'm sure that there are other fights he'd rather put Zurdo in, like a Jake Paul fight or a Benavidez fight, even a Badu Jack fight, but none of those fights are an option now. Badu's got a mandatory, Jake doesn't want to fight Zurdo, and David's fighting Anthony Yarde. So what do?
Doesn't seem to have much of a choice.
Jai Opetaia now becomes the biggest and most lucrative fight to put Zurdo Ramirez in. I don't really think that Zurdo's afraid of Jai Opetaia per se, but maybe Oscar is.
Beggars can't be choosers.
That's the thing. Zurdo could always make a voluntary defense of his 2 alphabet titles, but that won't pay him what boxing Jai Opetaia might pay him, and in a very general sense, boxers have a very limited window to make life-altering money that could leave them set for life long after their careers are over. For Zurdo Ramirez, this may be that chance, this may be that opportunity. It's risky.
But nothing ventured, nothing gained, and fortune favors the bold.